Welcome everyone. Today I'm on Lutruwita, Tasmanian Aboriginal land, and I want to acknowledge with deep respect the traditional custodians of the land, the Palawa people. I want to pay my respects to elders past and present and emerging, and to the Aboriginal community that continue to care for country. I stand for a future that profoundly respects and acknowledges Aboriginal perspective, culture, language and history, and the continued effort to fight for Aboriginal justice and the rights of paving way for a strong future. Thank you for all joining us today. For those who don't know, my name is Darlene McLennan and I'm the manager of the Australian Disability Clearinghouse in Education, or ADCET for short. Today I'm really excited to be welcoming Troy Weller back to us. Troy is the Learning Delivery Specialist for Microsoft. Troy, this is Troy's third presentation. I think we were just chatting then, there was probably probably last year, mid-year that he presented last time. Today, Troy's going to showcase the Microsoft Immersive Readers. Before we make a start, I probably should have mentioned it straight up. I'm just checking on the closed captions. Yes, good. Sorry, we had it.
It's working now.
Great, thank you. We were having trouble with our closed captionings to begin with. So for people who wish to use the closed captioning, you have some variability in how you see that, but we also have closed captionings available in a browser. If you check out the chat box, the link will be there for people who want to see the captions in a browser as well. If you have any technical difficulties, you can email us throughout the presentation at admin@adcet.edu.au. Troy will talk to us for around 50 or so minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes or so afterwards. Throughout Troy's presentation, feel free to ask any questions that you would like me to ask at the end of the presentation. If you could put those questions in the Q&A pod, that way it's an easier to us to manage. David Swain, an NDCO for Northern Queensland, is helping me manage the questions today, so he'll be feeding me your questions. Also, as we're getting more and more used to this technology, people are using the chat box, and really encourage you to say to each other hello, put any links or information that might be relevant to what Troy's saying. But make sure you actually click the panelist and all attendees box so we all get to enjoy the chatter and gets to play along. All right, so now I'm going to throw over to you, Troy. Thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful. I'm just making sure that you guys can actually see my screen.
Yep, we can.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much. Yeah, it has been about a year, I think, since I did whether it was the first or the last webinar. It's kind of cool because I think it's good timing to come back to Immersive Reader and look at what, you know, the changes that have been made. Really, the big changes is the fact that it's actually been rolled out to more apps and not just Microsoft apps, which is quite interesting. So looking at this, you know, Immersive Reader as a tool for reading support is I think key. What we're going to do in our next webinar, because we've got a series of 2, possibly more, but we'll see how we go. But the next one is going to focus on writing and showing how some of the tools can be used together to support writing. We'll definitely look at Immersive Reader again a little bit as a writing tool next time, but today is really going to focus more on using Immersive Reader for reading support. So this is what we're going to look at today. I'm going to take you in quickly. I want to show you the Microsoft Educator community because that's had a bit of an upgrade as well, and there's some really good resources for you to go back and access. The inclusive classroom, we'll talk a little bit about that, just about what we mean by that at Microsoft. And then we're going to dive right into reading support with Immersive Reader. But then I'm going to show you, as I said, Immersive Reader right across Microsoft 365, because Microsoft 365 is an ecosystem, it's a platform. But remembering that we can bring other apps and other tools in, right? So it's not just about Microsoft, but when we have that platform, the Immersive Reader is actually quite powerful right across the different tools. We'll have a bit of a play inside Teams, because I know a lot of universities, higher ed institutions, and even, obviously modern workplaces are also using Teams. And then I'll share some next steps and some other things that are available to you and resources, and then we'll jump into Q&A. One thing that I've really learned over this whole sort of, remote learning time, which is, I've been really supporting mostly in K-12 schools, is that there's so much information in these webinars. It's different having a face-to-face session, where you can sort of, stop and have breaks and do all that kind of stuff. It's really difficult in here. So I know there's a lot of information. So I hope you'll use this as a reference that you can go back to. You can, access the recording and, go back and, make it your own and make it something that you can revisit, because I know, I'm saying up front, there's a lot of information in here. So Microsoft's mission statement, this is our mission statement, to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And I've underlined every person there because I can say this to you, share prices aside and, money-making machines aside, there's a real culture of responsibility at Microsoft, especially around accessibility and learning support in the education space. And it's something that we take very seriously. It's something that I really enjoy being a part of. So I love the fact that, when we talk about this kind of work, it really does reflect back on the mission, Microsoft's mission. And it's really helpful for me when I go and talk to, the suits and the accountants and people like that. I can actually come back and say, no, this is our mission. This is really what we're supposed to be doing. And people love it and they buy in really quite quickly. Okay, so this is the Microsoft Educator community. The web address is education.microsoft.com. Microsoft Educator community is at education.microsoft.com. Please notice there's no www. Now I'm going to take you in and show you that now. I'm just going to make sure that you guys can see that screen there. Is that right, Darlene?
Yes, it is.
Okay, wonderful. So this is the Educator Center. We have a series of courses that are available to you in here. Now, I'm going to share these slides as a PDF. We'll make these available to you. So any sort of links and stuff that I share with you today, you will be able to access those through the PDF. But when you come into the courses, you can see here that there's a whole series of courses, right? And it's not just K-12. This definitely has a higher ed focus as well, and even for teacher trainers as well. So if you're in an education course at uni, this is actually a really good resource for you as well. But there's some really good stuff in here. But when you type in, for instance, start to type in inclusivity up here, there's a whole heap of really nice courses around accessibility and inclusivity. We've got some really good stuff happening with Code Jumper, which is a tangible, hands-on form of coding for the blind, which is awesome. But this one over here, Empower Every Student with an Inclusive Classroom, is definitely the course that I want you to access, because it's got some really good stuff that we're going to address today and even more. And it's a really good reference and a really good resource for you. Okay. So again, what I did was I came into education.microsoft.com. I just clicked down here on Explore Courses, and then I just started to type the word inclusive. And as I do, that course comes up for me. So it's an Empower Every Student with an Inclusive Classroom. So please go back and access that and have a look at some of the other accessibility stuff in there too. But we have the learning paths, which are groups of courses. So we at Microsoft have put these together in an order that we think is going to be helpful to you, where one course builds on the other. So again, if I start to type inclusivity, you can see we have 3 different inclusive education courses. I'll just click on this one, for example, which is the foundation course. And you can see here that there's a whole heap of courses built together. And there's that Empower Every Student with an Inclusive Classroom course again. But you can come and go to these at your own pace. You don't need to be an educator. When you come to this, you can sign in using a free Microsoft account, or you can use your Office 365 account, which is probably your uni email address and your uni password. All right, so really good series of resources there for you. Okay, so let's keep moving. So office.com is the start page for Office 365. And again, if you're from a university or a tertiary institution, you will probably find that your email address, your usual email address, and whatever that password you tend to use with that in your university system will get you in. Okay, so it's office.com, sign in. And it's pretty straightforward, as I said. All right, so just using your email address. Now, what I want to share with you today, though, is we're going to look at the online stuff, but I want to quickly just talk about the difference between the different kinds of Office, because there's, Office that we know and love installed on our Mac or our PC, but then there's all this, cloud-based stuff, and I just want to make sure that you understand the differences. And it does matter, because a lot of the accessibility tools are not going to be found in earlier versions of Office. So I want to show you how to access the latest, greatest version of Office, because chances are almost 100% of you will actually have access to installed versions of Office on your machine that has been paid for by your institution that you may not have even known about. I may have talked about this last time when I did my webinar, but it's still true. So Office 2019 is the latest, greatest version of Office that is available to you. You have probably installed that. Hopefully you have, or you may still be using Office 2016. Problem with that version though, is that it doesn't mature. Okay, so what I mean by that is if you've installed Office 2019, which to confuse us came out in Office 2018, if you installed that 2 years ago, there's no new feature updates. All right, it's pretty much as it was released. So it is a static version of Office. Now we talk about Office 365, which is Office in the cloud, which we just looked at very briefly a moment ago going into office.com. We'll come back to that in a moment, but this is where we're using the browser-based version, right? I hate to say it, but it's very similar to your Google Docs experience, okay? So coming through the browser, whether you're on your phone or your laptop or your iPad, you can go in through your browser and you can access that. But what we've got is we've got this other version of Office, okay, which is called Microsoft 365, okay, or Microsoft 365 apps. Now the Microsoft 365 apps are very similar. I'm just going to show my mouse up here, very similar to Office 2019, all right? However, the Microsoft 365 apps update with new features. So what I mean is, as a new version, a new feature or a new tool or a new capability is added, it's not going into Office 2019, but it will go into Microsoft 365 apps. So what that means for you though, as a student or as a teacher, is you need to be able to get that. And most institutions, if not all, have actually got 5 free copies for every teacher and every student. That's been paid for. All right. So I remember when I was doing my master's at Melbourne Uni a number of years ago, I'd heard a rumor. I wasn't working for Microsoft back then, and I'd heard a rumor that Melbourne Uni gave me, free copies of Office. Is this true? And then when I asked, there it was. Even though the co-op was, bundling Office, you could pay for it with your new device. Turned out the university had given it to us all for free. Now, what I later found out is that every single education department in Australia has done the same. Most Catholic dioceses have done the same. Most independent schools have done the same, that we didn't know. So my wife had 5 free copies as a teacher. I had 5 free copies as a teacher. My 2 kids had 5 free copies as students in the Victorian education system. We had 20 copies of Office, and I had no idea that we even had one. So I want to show you really quickly how to access that, because it's really important for you to know where to find that and how to find that. So as I said,
while you're doing that, Troy, sorry, I just might encourage us to slow down a tiny little bit. You're doing well, but
sure,
just, yeah, thanks.
So when we come into office.com, over here is this little button here, Install Office. All right. Now, when you come in on your Mac or on your PC to office.com, so you're on the machine that you want to install Office onto, you click on this little button here. And then you click here, Install Office 365 Apps, all right? Now, by doing that, it'll come up with a dialog box. I'm not going to do it now. It'll slow my system down, but it will download and install the latest, greatest version, that Microsoft 365 apps. It will put that onto your machine. Now, if you're running Office 2019 or Office 2016, it will write over the top, okay? And you'll just have the latest, greatest version. And then because you've got that, because it's a subscription service, it will constantly update with new features depending on what release ring that you're on. So whether, you're getting it updated once a year, once every 6 months, or even more frequently than that. So again, what we did was we went to office.com, we clicked up here on Install Office, and then the Office 365 apps come up like that. All right. Now, again, the accessibility features are rolled out all the time. And as those things are rolled out, then you want to be able to get them onto your version of Office. So please go and update and get yourself into that. Okay, so that's that. Now, in terms of inclusive education, Microsoft, we pride ourselves in seeing that our inclusive education tools are going to give students more personalized access to the curriculum. They're going to optimize the educator time. So whether you're a lecturer, whether you're a tutor, these tools are going to make your life easier. And I promise you that is true and not just spin. But lastly, we want to improve learning outcomes, right? So we want to make sure that people are better accessing their curriculum, and in the end, they're learning. So we want to see students increase their independence and experience a reduction of stigma. So we're talking about the same device as everybody else in the classroom and the same software as everybody else in the classroom. Again, I said educators are more empowered to engage every learner. We want to make sure that educators can see this as something that is helpful to them and not another thing that they have to master. And then lastly, of course, institutions are able to build reputations as positive places that promote equity and inclusion. By this being made available to students, it's a good thing for the university's reputation in the community. So when we talk about the inclusive classroom, now remembering we're not just talking about higher ed at Microsoft, we're also talking about K-12. So this is right through your student life. But we've divided it up into these 4 areas. One being reading support, which we're going to address today. Another being writing support, which will be our next webinar. And then we also have we also have some tools that will support you in terms of numeracy and maths, and also speaking and listening. But jumping in today, let's talk about reading support. So if you don't know the story of Immersive Reader, it was originally called Learning Tools, and it won Microsoft's 2015 internal hackathon. So a group of Microsoft developers, marketing people, admin all got together. They could walk away from their job for a week or 2 and work on something that they thought was, was meaningful. So it's a long time ago now. It's, 5 years ago, but they built Learning Tools specifically looking at dyslexia. But Learning Tools became, quite popular outside of the education space. So it was rebranded as Immersive Reader. And we've seen it, not only in the higher ed space, but we've also seen it in business, etc. So let's jump in and let's have a look at Immersive Reader. I'm going to show it to you, its capabilities. It might have been a little while since you've seen it, or maybe not at all. But then we're going to, as I said, we're going to jump in and look where it lives, I should say, right across the Microsoft stack. So let's start in Word. Now, I want to stress that really there's, most of you, as you know, there's Word for Mac, there's Word for Windows 10, there's, older versions of Word, there's Word Online, which is Word in the browser. But the Immersive Reader that lives inside Word Online is somewhat different to the version that lives in the Windows 10 app of Word. So we are going to look at that next week, the one that lives in the Windows 10 app, because that's really good for writing. The fact that they are different is actually a positive, because one really supports reading and the other more supports writing. So we will definitely explore the Windows 10 app next webinar, but for this one we're going to jump into Word Online. And the cool thing about this is, regardless of what tool you're on, whether you're on a Mac, whether you're on an iPad, whether you're on a PC, because we're coming in to the app, because we're coming in through the browser, we're all going to have the same experience. So when you come into office.com, you can see here's a lot of your online apps, but you've got a lot more if you click on all apps over here, all right? But we're going to jump into Word. So all I need to do is click on Word like that, and then that's going to open my document. Now, I've obviously set this one up already. So here's a piece of text that a student may be challenged by simply because of its presentation, because of its form, maybe the language, maybe the student is challenged because they come from a language background other than English. Whatever the challenge, Immersive Reader hopefully is going to have some level of support for you. So if you haven't seen Word Online before, Word Online's quite wonderful because it's very similar to the Word that we know and love, unless you're using a very old version of Word. But you can see here, if you know how to use Word, then you'll know how to use Word Online. We've got another thing up here called Tell Me. So Tell Me what you want to do is our search bar, but it doesn't just give us instructions, we'll actually bring the buttons up. So Immersive Reader, whilst it lives here under the View tab, and I can find Immersive Reader, if I don't remember where it lives, I can just start to type Immersive Reader in here, and you can see what happens is it actually brings the button up for me as part of that drop down. And I click on that, and there we go, it's opened Immersive Reader. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click over here, I'm going to maximize that because I want to remove all the distractions of the browser. Now, what Immersive Reader does, I'll just minimize that again, or I'll bring that down again. You can see that when I click on the Immersive Reader button, the first thing it does is it strips away the app. So Word is actually gone, and I've just got the document, but I want to make sure that I get rid of all my distractions. So I click on that little button up there. All right, now you can see here, I'm in the document. All the bells and whistles and buttons and colors and everything, all those distractions are gone, and I've just got me and the document. All right, so it's a black text on a white background. At the moment, it's quite small, but that's okay. Everything that I need to change this document is now inside the document itself. I'm not having to go out to my settings on my Mac or on my PC or in the browser. Everything that I need is inside. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different icons here. Let's start with the text preferences icon, or the AA. All right, so I'm just going to click on that, and you can see I get a drop down here. And this is where I get to start to manipulate the text. Look at this, as I increase my text size with this little slider, I'm just moving my slider up and down. As I move my slider up and down, the text size is changed right there inside the text, all right? So I'm able to do that inside the document. The other thing I can do is I can increase the spacing. I'm going to click on this little increase spacing button there, and you can see that what it's done is it's increased the lines, the spaces between the lines, the spaces between the letters, and the spaces between the words. All right, so for something like dyslexia with visual crowding, that's actually going to be a game changer. And I can accentuate that even further by increasing the text size even further. I've got 3 simple fonts that I can access. All right, I've got Calibri, Sitka, and a primary teacher's favorite, Comic Sans. I've also got the ability to change my themes. Okay, so I can set my theme to dark mode. I can have, you know, black on yellow, black on blue, etc. The other thing I can do is I can show the source formatting. And what that does is if I've got, let me scroll down for you. If I've got things like bold and italics in my text, that will actually leave that inside for me, so I can turn that on and off as well. All right. Now, where it gets really cool though, is when I come down here and hit the play button. Now, the play button is where I turn on Read Aloud, and this has just been updated in the last week or so. So our Australian accent has got a brand new voice. Have a listen to this.
An academic or scholarly journal is a periodical publication in which scholarship relating to a particular academic discipline is published. Academic journals serve as permanent and transparent forums for the presentation, scrutiny, and discussion of research.
Right. So hopefully you can hear that. It used to sound, I used to think it sounded really quite natural, but now it sounds even better. You've also got the voice settings button here, so I can slow it down and speed it up. Those of you that use screen readers or know people that use screen readers know that speeding up is much more important than slowing down. So I'll just play that for you.
Research. They're usually peer-reviewed or refereed. Content typically takes the form of articles presenting original research, review articles, and book reviews. The purpose of an academic...
So what that's doing there is, you know, people, they don't necessarily have any sort of cognitive impairment. They just unable to access the text. So they want it to come, you know, nice and fast. So yes, you can slow it down and you can speed it up. Now, the other thing that we've got inside here, when I click on the grammar options button, is I've got the ability to syllabify. All right. So it will break the words down into their syllables. Okay. And the artificial intelligence is actually much better than it was before, and it's really good at its ability to break those down into syllables. I can highlight my parts of speech. All right, so I can click on these little buttons here and show all the nouns, show all the verbs, the adjectives, and the adverbs. All right, I can change the colors of those. All right, so if I have trouble differentiating or distinguishing certain colors, I can make sure that those colors are very different, so that it becomes easier for me to distinguish my nouns from my verbs, etc. But if I do have trouble with colors, I can click on this little show the labels button here, and that will actually put those labels above those words. Now, what's happening there is that the AI is actually reading the words in context. So if I had a word like, say, for example, tag, I will tag you, it will find it as a verb. Let's play a game of tag, it will find it as a noun. So words that actually could be ambiguous in terms of, you know, what parts of speech, it will actually contextualize them for you. So it's important to note that for it to be able to do that, it needs to be able to access the online service. So we do need to be connected to the internet when we're using Immersive Reader. If you have a Windows 10 machine, there is an extension that is downloadable for Windows 10. Go into your Windows Store, okay, your Microsoft Windows Store on your Windows 10 machine, and you can download the offline extension, okay? That is there for you as well. All right, so again, a moment ago, we saw the parts of speech, etc. Let's click on the reading preferences button. The first thing that we can do is we can turn on line focus. All right, so I'm just going to make this, I'm actually going to make this just a little bit smaller. Let's come back in here. So you can see that with line focus, I have 1, 3, and 5 line focus, depending on what you need. Okay, so if you having difficulty with some of that focus, this is, you know, that sort of computerized version of running your finger underneath the words as you read. So let's have a look at that.
Academic Journal. According to Henry Oldenburg, the first editor of Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society, is to give researchers a venue to impart their knowledge to one another.
Okay, so that's quite cool. Now let me just turn that off for you. The other thing that we've got is Picture Dictionary. Now Picture Dictionary is going to be much more about a K-12 thing, but I do know that some people do find it helpful at times when they hit a word and they want to get that little bit of a picture prompt. So for example, if we click on some of these words, you'll see that when I click on that, I can see it and hear it.
Natural.
All right, just the word. I don't need to have the whole document, but it will also give me picture prompts. All right, and it, obviously not every single word is going to have a Picture Dictionary prompt, but a lot of them do. And these are not contextualized, so you can see there that it's actually going to bring up all different potential answers for you. Okay, so that's Picture Dictionary. Now, the other thing that we've got is we've got Translate. And Translate is actually probably my favorite part of this tool because I just think it's way cool. We can translate into another language. So for example, if we're thinking about a lot of our students are actually coming into, actually one in 4 come from a language background other than English, whether they're international or not. That's a university stat. If I come down into something like simplified Chinese, now what happens when I click on a word, I'm going to see it and hear it in English.
Scholarly.
And see it and hear it in my language. And in this case, it's Chinese.
学术.
Okay, which has also got a very natural sounding voice. So what I've done is I've come into the Translate tool and I've just clicked by word. All right, now let's have a look at another language. For example, Korean. If I come down here to Korean, now when I click on a word that I may be struggling with, I can see it and hear it in English.
Published.
And see it and hear it in Korean.
게시.
All right. Now, when I want to do the entire document, all right, so I just click here on document. Now you can see that what it's done there is actually translated that entire document into Korean. I can go backwards and forwards between the English and the Korean, or the original language and the Korean, and I can have that read to me in Korean.
학술 또는 학술 저널은 특정 학문 분야와 관련된 장학금이 출판되는 정기 간행물입니다. 학술 저널은 연구에 대한 프레젠테이션, 조사 및 토론을 위한 영구적이고 투명한 포럼의 역할을 합니다.
Okay, so depending on the language that we're choosing, the features are going to be different. And what I mean by that is you can see that Korean's actually got the parts of speech. Okay, it's highlighted that. Korean will also have a picture dictionary. Let me try and find, it's really hard for me here. I'm looking, there we go. So Korean will actually have picture dictionary. But when I go into something like Mandarin, which I was in a moment ago, okay, so I was in the Chinese simplified, you can see that when I translate that, I've not got the parts of speech, I've not got the picture dictionary, etc. But it is actually got a really nice voice. Have a listen.
学术或学术期刊是出版与特定学术学科有关的学术论文的。
So the more complex the text, the more difficult the translation is going to be. So keep that in mind, right? More simple texts are actually, it's going to have an easier time translating, but it is a very, very powerful tool. So not every language is going to have a voice. Not every language is going to have parts of speech. Not every language is going to have picture dictionaries, but it is there. So you can see in terms of being an EAL or an ESL learner, it's fantastic, but also if you're learning another language, all right? So if you're learning Japanese or French or something like that, this has got a lot of really cool potential. I really like the fact that because that translation, that voice is so good in some of those languages, it actually helps me with my conversation and with my spoken pronunciation, etc. So go in and have a bit of a play with that, all right? So again, what it looked like before was a piece of text that looked like that. But now, when I click on Immersive Reader, it remembers exactly the way that I've set it, right? So we're not having to go back in and set and do all those settings every time we go in. No, once I've set this up on my machine, it will remember my settings, all right? And it will make it quite easy for me every time I come in. So regardless of what the original document looked like, now it's always going to look exactly as I want it to look whenever I click on the Immersive Reader button. All right. So let's keep moving. Now, the cool thing about this as well, Immersive Reader not just has the ability to translate, but it also has the ability to identify multiple languages, all right? So when it comes on to a document, now let me take you back here. I'm going to show you, I'm going to jump out of that one. I might close that one down. Have a look at this document here. Now, in this document, you can see there's Japanese, there's Arabic, there's French, there's German, there's Nordic languages, there's Chinese. There's so much going on in this document. Immersive Reader can actually read those documents and identify the different languages. So when I click on Immersive Reader here, when I click on play, have a look what happens and just listen to the way Immersive Reader jumps back and forth between these different languages. And imagine how many people you would have to have in a room to be able to do this without a computer. Here we go.
Here is an example of English being spoken.
À vaincre sans péril, on triomphe sans gloire.
No dejes para mañana lo que puedas hacer hoy.
안 들을 요리 의무가 야시.
أحضر الناس جوابا من لم يغضب.
Sølvreven elsker OneNote utrolig masse.
Du siehst den Wald vor lauter Bäumen nicht.
All right. Again, you can't, some of the languages have male and female languages. Australian in particular only has a female, but if I was to click that over now and play.
Nicht. Ahogado el niño, tapando el pozo.
Okay, it's going to jump back and forth between male and female depending on what I'm comfortable with. So, okay, we look at that, right? And we see all these different languages. Now, I want you to put yourself in a position of someone that's maybe coming from an EAL background. And, you know, for us to look at these languages, you know, for most of us, of course, it's just become sort of gibberish to us because we can't decode that. But I want you to imagine, for us translating this, let's go into English and let's go into our Aussie accent, okay? And now let's do the entire document. So a moment ago, that was all these different languages. Now have a look at this.
Here is an example of English being spoken. To be conquered without peril.
Let me come back here so we can see.
Here is an example of English being spoken. To be conquered without peril, one triumphs without glory. Don't leave for tomorrow what you can do today. It is easier to give birth than to think.
So you can see here, here's all these different languages and then we're going straight in. The ability for this to translate is really, really quite powerful. So it's not only identifying these languages, it's also doing that translation, which is great. Okay, so where do we find Immersive Reader? Well, we've already seen that it's in Word Online, and I'm going to take you and show you Word for Windows 10 next time. But we can find it in Office 365. Now, for most of us that are working in the education sector or maybe as a student, Office 365 is probably available to you. Your institution has probably already purchased it for you. So you go to office.com, sign in with your university email address and password, and you're in. But we also have a free version, which is not as feature rich as Office 365 in terms of tools, but Office Online does have your basics, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, etc. And you can access that with a free account. So just go again into office.com, set yourself up a free account, and it's pretty easy to do, and it'll take you into Office Online. And then it's also available in Teams. So now what I'm going to do is I want to take you in and show you some of the individual tools. Okay, so I just want to show you where to find it and how easy it is to use. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take us into OneNote. So here I am in OneNote for Windows 10. When I click on OneNote, when I click on View and then over here on Immersive Reader, you can see that Immersive Reader is actually here now. Because this is in a different app, it's not come through my browser, I'd have to go in and set that up. But once I've set it up, it's ready to go, but it's right there living in OneNote. It's also available to us in OneNote online, all right? So you can come in through your browser and you can be accessing that. You don't need to have necessarily a powerful machine. If you've got if you've got a browser, you can come in through OneNote online. I click on that. And because we're back in the browser, it's remembered my settings, all right? So there it is straight through the OneNote app.
A change that has occurred in the Western world is an increased incidence in divorce when people no longer want to be married, so they want to make...
It's a bit depressing, but there you go. So that's where it lives in there. Now, the other thing I want to share with you is it is available, as I said, through the browser. So if you're on a Mac, a PC, a Chromebook, an iPad, and you're using your browser, then you can access it in Word, you can access it in OneNote, and some of these other tools we'll look at in a moment. But if you're wanting to use dedicated apps, then please note it is not in Word, and it is not in, it's not in Word for the iPad, and it's not in Word for the Mac. All right, you can go through the browser, but it's not in the dedicated apps. However, it is in OneNote. All right, so there's a dedicated app for OneNote for iPad and dedicated app for OneNote for Mac, and you can access Immersive Reader through those. Next thing I want to share with you is Office Lens. I think I talked about this a little bit last time. Office Lens is an app for your iPad, for your iPhone, and for your Android tablets and Android phones, all right? So there's dedicated apps. Just go to your Play Store, look for Microsoft Office Lens. You'll see the little icon, which is there on the left side of the screen, and you can download that onto your device. Now, I'm going to show this to you now. I want to show you some of the potential. This is looking at it as an iPhone, but what I'm about to show you is possible through your Android devices as well. So I'm just going to play this video for us.
Turn your iPhone into a scanner. Office Lens crops, straightens, enhances, and makes pictures of whiteboards and documents readable. How do you save and share your meeting notes on the whiteboard after meetings? Use Office Lens. Just frame your shot from any angle and snap a picture. Office Lens automatically crops, straightens, sharpens, and cleans up whiteboard images.
Okay, so let me just stop there for a moment. So this is the whiteboard feature of Office Lens. And so if you're unable to keep up with what's going on, you know, maybe you're in a tute or you're in a lecture and there's a whole heap of notes going up on the whiteboard, you can actually use Office Lens to grab a picture, whether you're on your iPhone, your iPad, or your Android device, and you can grab that photograph of that of the whiteboard, and it will straighten and it will sharpen and it will clean up that image for you. All right, so that's whiteboard mode, but let's keep going.
Save the image to OneNote or OneDrive and get it from any of your devices. Or share the image in an email. Do you ever worry about misplacing important documents? Switch to document mode and Office Lens will trim and color the image perfectly. Save time and convert the image to a Word document that you can edit.
Okay, so what we see here is what's called document mode. So when you get the app, you can switch over to document mode and it will take photographs of documents. It will use optical character recognition and convert those into PDFs, into Word documents, etc. Drop them into OneNote. You can have a document that's analog, that's out in the non-digital world. You can take a photograph of that with Office Lens, and then you can turn it into a document that you can edit, etc. Now, where that's really cool, let me just jump back into this for us. Where that's really cool is when I come into something like OneNote, what I've done here is I've taken a photograph of a textbook using Office Lens, okay? So I've taken a photograph and then I've dropped that into OneNote for Windows 10, all right? So just using the features, because we're in the one ecosystem, from my iPhone or from my Android phone, I can tell it where I want it to drop and it will come in here into OneNote. Now, what I do is when I click on Immersive Reader, because it's using that optical character recognition, look at this. I have that full Immersive Reader experience. Let me just turn on my nouns and my adjectives so you can see that. I have that full Immersive Reader experience happening from the photograph of text, right? So I can play it just like this.
Stunned that she felt she had to ask my permission to find her own answer.
All right, so a moment ago, it looked like this, but then when I click on Immersive Reader, it will take me in. All right, now what's happened for the iPhone, and I'm just going to make sure that I can come back into this for you guys. Just give me a moment. Now what's happened for the iPhone, so this isn't yet on Android, this is only on iPad and iPhone, is that we've put Immersive Reader inside the actual app. So it's the full Immersive Reader experience. So what happens is you can see here that this person is using their iPhone. Have a look what they do. So they're taking a photograph. There it is. They click on it like that. Now, instead of dropping it into OneNote, we can actually click on the Immersive Reader button inside the app, and the full Immersive Reader experience now happens.
Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout. Would not take the garbage out.
All right, so that full experience, changing the text size, increasing spacing, etc., is all happening. So this is for iOS, all right? So feel free to go and download that and have a bit of a play with that. You don't need to be dropping it into OneNote or Word Online or anything like that. Have a look at the translation. There it is with the picture dictionary.
Jamones. Y aunque su papá gritaba y gritaba, ella simplemente no sacaba la basura.
Okay, so that's what that looks like. So
what a shame we can't travel, Troy, and take pictures of menus and have them read out.
Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it? Yeah. Well, see, a really good example of how that could be used is if a student or if a person is at a train station and there's some sort of disruption notice, or there's some sort of warning notice at an airport or something like that, you can actually just take it to your take your phone up to that picture or to that sign, take a photograph of that, turn it back and have it read to you in your language in real time. So last time I gave this demo, that didn't exist, but in the last year, I just love it. We're getting closer and closer to Star Trek's Universal Translator. All right, so anyway, let's keep going. So this is now the Edge browser, all right? So if you're using a Windows 10 device, there are some features that are in the Edge browser that weren't there before. So I'm going to just jump back into my, should have prepared that one a little bit better. Here I am at the Edge website, okay? Now I've got an article here, okay, all about Pauline Hanson and what she's doing. This is just from today, all right? And you can see there's graphics and all kinds of stuff in here. Now you can see that what we've done in the Edge browser is we've now built Immersive Reader directly into the Edge browser. There used to be a version of it, but not as feature rich as this is now. So look what happens when I click on this Immersive Reader button. It takes me into the document. Now, look at this. It hasn't taken the graphics away, because obviously in websites, graphics are oftentimes really important, but I've still got the ability to read aloud. Have a look at this.
Pauline Hanson imposes deadline of Thursday to reopen Queensland borders. National coronavirus pandemic. For our free coronavirus pandemic coverage, learn more here.
I love it, struggling with coronavirus, too new a word for it. But we've got read aloud. We've also got the ability to, again, increase and decrease our text size. We can increase and decrease our spacing. We've got all these page themes again. We've got reading preferences over here with line focus, okay, 1, 3, and 5 lines. And then we've also got the grammar tools. We've got the ability to syllabify, and we've also got the highlighting of our nouns, our verbs, our adjectives, and our adverbs. What's missing there is translation, but you can put the translation extension into this, and you can be translating as well. All right. So a moment ago, that document was full of ads and links and all kinds of bits and pieces. And then when I click on Immersive Reader, it's going to remember it exactly as I wanted it to be. All right, so that's what it looks like in Edge. The next one is Microsoft Forms. All right, so Microsoft Forms are very similar to some of your other survey tools, but what we've done, and I'm going to be really quick about this because I know my time is slipping away. It's going to make me sign in, so I'll just do that really quickly. So when I come into Microsoft Forms now, we've built Immersive Reader into that. So you can see here the Immersive Reader as I hover over these questions and hover over this information, the Immersive Reader button comes up. So this is a form that I can fill in. So it's asking me a question, true or false, etc. When I click on it here, We can see Immersive Reader remembering my settings. It's going to read the entire question to me and the potential answers.
2 Microsoft 365 apps can be installed on your laptop. 1 point. True. False. End of question. Close the reader to input your answer. Dotto.
All right, so I close it and then I can give my answer. I can listen to that as many times as I want. So that's what it looks like in Forms. The next one I want to show you is the integration into Outlook, right? So this is key because we're looking now at our emails, right? So the ability to have Immersive Reader inside our emails is great. So look here, here's a question, here's an email that I sent to myself. If I'm having trouble accessing that, that's okay. I come up here to my ellipses, 3 little dots sitting here at the top of the screen, show it in Immersive Reader, and now my emails are read to me.
Hi there, Troy. I am just writing to you so you can show everyone how to use Immersive Reader in Outlook in the browser. See you later. Your friend, Troy.
That's a bit weird, isn't it? I'm sending myself emails and calling myself my friend. But I can still highlight my parts of speech. I can do the translation, all kinds of stuff. So for students and for anyone really, this is going to be a really cool tool. I know this is not going to be relevant so much in a higher ed space, but I couldn't help it. I want to throw this in that we've actually built Immersive Reader into Minecraft Education Edition. So that means that Minecraft, which is notoriously text-based, students can actually, or children can actually now hear and translate those, those slates and those chalkboards and other things that they come across. We've got it inside Teams as well. So Immersive Reader lives inside Teams. I'm going to bring you in and I'm going to show you when I'm inside the posts. Okay, so this is where we're having our discussion. All right, so this is our chat in the post area. So this is the public chat. If I come to something and I want to know what people are talking about, I just hover. I've got my ellipses and there's Immersive Reader down here as well. So now I can actually have that entire chat read to me, and you can see it's still remembering my settings because I'm still in the exact same app when I'm inside the browser. All right. The other thing that we've done is we've actually built Immersive Reader into assignments, okay, as well. So those of you that are using Teams for education purposes, now when a student clicks on their assignments, we're going to student view so we can see what it looks like. Immersive Reader is over here. So all the instructions, etc., for this assignment can all be read to the student directly through Immersive Reader. So we've tried to build that right across all different aspects of our tools. But what's amazing about Teams is Teams brings everything together. So OneNote inside Teams, Forms inside Teams, Word inside Teams, and remembering that Immersive Reader lives inside these tools. So when we put our learning engagements or our work environments inside Teams, we know that people are going to be able to access Immersive Reader regardless of what tool they're using, because these are all native to Teams. All right, so Immersive Reader in Word in Teams, Immersive Reader in Forms in Teams, Immersive Reader in OneNote in Teams. Really quite powerful. The other thing that's happened is that Microsoft has made the Immersive Reader API free for any organization to use. So that's true for your university. If you're building apps, you can bring the Immersive Reader API into your app. And you can see some of these companies, these are non-Microsoft companies that have actually built Immersive Reader into their stuff. So Canvas, for example, now has Immersive Reader in Canvas pages, right? Oxford University Press has started building Immersive Reader into their ebooks and other things as well. So if you've got a favorite app and you think, hey, Immersive Reader would be perfect, you can reach out to the publisher directly, let them know. And again, there's a link at the bottom here. So you can steer them to that. I'm told it's about half a day's work for a developer to build this into their apps and into their websites, etc. How are we going for time? We're coming up on time, aren't we? So what I'm going to do is
it's okay, Troy. A lot of the questions we probably can answer afterwards. So it might be, continue on with it and we can do the questions, at another day.
So in terms of next steps, again, I want to share these slides with you so you can go back and access. There's a really good page in the Educator Center called All About Immersive Reader, which will tell you everything you need to know. There's PDFs, there's videos, there's all kinds of stuff. Remember, I also told you about Empower Every Student with an Inclusive Classroom. It's a great course that I think you're going to find really useful, and you can learn how to use Immersive Reader and other tools in education context. The other thing that's happened is Microsoft, with the whole remote learning period that we've been going through, have published a web page inside the Educator Center, special education and accessibility resources for remote learning. It is much bigger than just remote learning though, okay? So don't see that and go, okay, we're not remote learning. Blended learning, in class, etc. And that's aka.ms/MEC accessibility. So again, grab that link when you get the slides, but there's so much stuff for you there, whether you're in a higher ed space or K-12 space, or even in a working environment. Another one, and I won't take you to these now, but I will quickly talk you through them. We've got the Disability Answers Desk. These links will work when you access. The Disability Answers Desk is a 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. on weekends, 1-800 number. Okay, and you can call that number, and if you've got questions about accessibility in Office or on Windows 10, so even if you're on your iPad or your Mac and you've got questions about Office, they will help you around disability questions, all right? So don't ring them and say, I'm having trouble, turning on my computer. No, they're not a help desk in that sense, but around disability, 100% they're there to help you. There is a 24/7 chat as well, text-based chat, but if you want to speak to someone, it's basically 9 to 9, Monday to Friday. There's also the Microsoft Accessibility YouTube channel. Wonderful videos on there for you to access. So please jump in. This one here where I've put here, give your feedback. I want to take you in and show you this quickly because this is Microsoft Accessibility Feedback channel. If you have suggestions for accessibility features, accessibility tools, you can actually pop them in here. Or if you like what someone else has suggested, you can vote. And the higher the number, the more the quicker, I should say, this will be worked on. All right. So you can go in there and give your feedback and have a bit of a vote. The other thing too is the Microsoft Enable, the Microsoft Accessibility Twitter handle at MSFT Enable. That's another one worth jumping in. And there's a couple of ebooks that are free. I'd invite you to go in and have a look at those as well. All right. I'm going to leave these slides for you to explore in your own time so that we can have a bit of a chat and see if there's any questions. If you do want to find me on social media, that's me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook as well, just by searching for my name. You know it's me because of this little avatar here. All right, I did try and slow down, ladies. I hope I wasn't too fast. Let's see if there's any questions.
Great, thanks, Troy. There are a lot of questions, but it's probably going to be more people having the time to explore. There's kind of a lot of practical questions, and also it might be worth, and I know I'll do, is actually go back over the presentation and yeah, kind of do that exploration. One of the questions was, can you take a photo of a textbook page and it be inserted into a Word document using the Immersive Reader? Like, I suppose I'm trying to unpack that question, but I saw you take that picture and put into the Immersive and have an Immersive Reader, but to get into Word then.
Yep, yeah, definitely. So we saw that video where he actually did take a photo of the text and then he was using it on Word. So definitely it can be dropped in there and then you can turn Immersive Reader on.
Okay, so it just got dropped into Word.
Yeah,
must have. Yep, that's great. Yeah, so another one was, can you toggle the word highlighting as it reads off and on, and how does that work?
Can you toggle the word highlighting off and on? No. So when we're using Immersive Reader, it will actually highlight the words as it goes along. What you can turn on and off is the line focus. So you can turn the line focus on and off, but no, it will actually highlight each word. There's no way to turn that off.
Yeah, okay. And does it work in PowerPoint?
No, but I know that if you want to, as I mentioned before, if you want to vote on that, I know that there is a lot of people that want to see it brought into PowerPoint. So please jump in and give your suggestion there.
Yeah, I was thinking when we spoke previously about that voting, it might be something on the Ofsted list. We have a listserv of over 700 practitioners across the tertiary sector. We might kind of put out some of the key questions and get people voting, so we can get some of the issues up and going.
Mobilise the troops. That sounds brilliant.
Yep, no, that's great. So you did talk about the internet connection. Can you go through, so just kind of explain, because I know you actually mentioned this before, that it does need the internet connection, but what was the one that didn't need the internet connection? What was?
Yeah, sure. So this is only true for Windows 10, but if you're on your Windows device and you type in here I start to type store, and then it brings up the Microsoft Store. You don't need to sign in. You will actually get options to sign in. You don't need to. But then what you can do is you can find up here, let me just open that up. If I come in here to Immersive Reader, there's the Immersive Reader offline extension, and you can install that onto your machine.
Okay. Have you, like, the PDF one is absolutely fantastic. I'll take a picture of PDF and get that converted. Is there a limit to that? Like, you know, like how many pictures can you take? How many?
Not that I'm aware of, no. There's none.
Oh, that's brilliant. All right. One great question is, does it convert to Braille?
Not that I know of, sorry.
Oh, what a brilliant question.
But you know what? We've got, you're talking at the moment with Kenny Singh, one of our Microsoft internal folks who himself uses screen readers and these kinds of things. So that'll be a great question for him about what sort of integration is there with Braille devices, etc.
Yeah. All right. So someone's talking about the issue that they're having with Teams in the question about Teams with screen readers. We had asked Troy to cover off a little bit about Teams and the issue with screen readers, but it's not his kind of expertise. What we're doing is Troy's put us onto a person within Microsoft that will be able to hopefully work with us on a presentation. So hopefully that presentations will come in about 2 or 3 weeks. So
yeah, wonderful. And he's great. That's Kenny. He'll be wonderful.
Yeah, no, I think he'll be a good friend. Someone's just also asked, but I don't quite understand, like, can IR be used in Sway? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, so can Immersive Reader be used in Sway?
IR, see, why did I not? I just hadn't attached IR. I think, yep.
So just, as long as you're using the Edge browser, right? So as far as I know at the moment, Immersive Reader has not been made native to the Sway app. But if you open your Sway inside the Edge browser, then you'll be able to click on the Immersive Reader button up here, and it should be able to read your Sway like it does any other web page. All right. If I'm wrong about that, reach out to me and I'll find out a better way around it. But I'm guessing that that's exactly how it would work.
That's brilliant. We did put in the chat that Troy's presentation will be available up on ADCET in the next day or 2 or 3, but probably the next day or 2, knowing how Jane works. And the presentation will be there. So you'll be able to click through on those links and take some time to explore the Immersive Reader more, because it's absolutely fantastic. So our next presentation is happening next week, and Troy is going to talk to us about support for writing using Microsoft tools. So that's a presentation for next week. So if you haven't signed on, please do. You know, Troy, your presentation is brilliant as always. I kind of come away with this just mind-blowingly, just thinking how far we've come. I started in this sector 15 years ago, and just, yeah, could never have imagined that we've come this far in such a short time. So it's absolutely brilliant, of the commitment that Microsoft has given to accessibility.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, so thank you for your time, and thank you everybody for joining us. We will go through the questions and just see if there's anything that Troy can answer, and we'll put that on our website. And yeah, thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you all next week.